Is it still possible to get PR after studying in Canada? That's a question many of you are asking, especially with all the recent changes in immigration right now. If I'm being honest, the past several months have been challenging times for Canada. We're currently facing a housing crisis, there's a noticeable shift in the labor market, and pretty much Canada is looking for more highly skilled candidates for PR, targeting specific career industries based on each province and territory's labor market needs. On top of that, being fluent in both English and French is becoming increasingly important for those looking to stay long-term. So being at the receiving end of this, as a prospective or current international student in Canada, you might find it intimidating or even risky to come here right now. You may have questions like, what are my chances of getting PR? What does long-term immigration look like for students now? Is it worth the headache or resources? All valid questions really, but before we start panicking, let's first understand what it really means to study in Canada. By the end, we'll revisit these questions and hopefully arrive at a consensus on whether getting PR is still possible after your studies. So without further ado, let's dive right in. To begin, it's important to understand the typical steps students follow to become eligible for a PR pathway to Canada. So first, you study a program in Canada for at least a year, graduate, then apply and work on a post-graduation work permit, and then gain skilled work experience and possibly apply for PR. Let's take it step by step. First, you need to study in Canada for at least a year. Now, relating this back to my experience, I took a one-year program in graphic design. And when choosing where to study, I made sure of two things. One, I ensured that the school was a DLI or Designated Learning Institution, which is essential for being eligible to apply for a study permit in Canada. Two, I chose a program that was PGWP eligible from the start. This was crucial because it meant that after graduation, I would be able to apply and be able to work in Canada on a PGWP. Now, assuming there are no hiccups in completing your program and meeting the graduation requirements, the next step is to apply for the post-graduation work permit. The beauty of the PGWP is that it allows you to stay in Canada after graduation and gain valuable work experience here. This work permit is an open work permit, meaning you can work for any employer across Canada, giving you a lot of flexibility in choosing where to work after graduation. You can get a PGWP for up to 3 years, but the duration depends on how long your study program is. So do you see where I'm getting at? Unfortunately, because I only took a one-year program, I ended up with a PGWP that only allowed me to work in Canada for 1 year. This was a bit of a wrong move on my part because the PGWP is a one-time deal, meaning you can only get this type of open work permit once in your lifetime. This one wrong move set me back and almost messed up my timeline big time. And I'll explain why shortly, but for now, let's just move on to the final step to drive this point home. Now that you've earned your PGWP, your next goal is to gain enough work experience in a skilled job. This work experience is crucial because it makes you eligible for a PR pathway, usually through the Express Entry program. So what is Express Entry? Well, pretty much it's a competitive points-based system that ranks you based on your age, language skills, education, and work experience, yada yada. The ultimate goal is to get an invitation to apply for PR. Now, this is where it gets tricky because to apply for PR, Canada needs to invite you. And this invitation really depends on what Canada's current labor needs are. Relating this to my experience, I did manage to land a skilled job right after graduation, and thankfully, I was able to work there for the total duration of my PGWP. On the day I met the Express Entry requirements, I qualified under 2 Express Entry categories, the Canadian Experience class and the Federal Skilled Workers program. But then, I had to overcome my biggest hurdle yet, which was playing the waiting game to get invited to apply for PR. Now, this is where the 1-year PGWP timeline really messed me up. You see, you can't know for sure if the next Express Entry draw will invite you to apply for PR. So if you have a limited work permit duration, this can be nerve-wracking, and that's exactly what happened to me. In every invitation round, I couldn't meet the cutoff score that Canada set to be invited for PR. So I kept waiting and waiting and waiting until my work permit expired. Well, as you can tell, I'm still here, so there must be a happy ending, right? And yes, there was. In fact, I felt like someone out there was looking out for me because what happened next was truly a long shot. A miracle even. I pretty much made the bold decision to stay in Canada a bit longer on a visitor record. And yeah, that's a bit risky, but I did give myself a deadline. If I wasn't invited within a certain time frame, I would pack my bags and go home. The turning point here happened during the lockdown, when Canada focused on inviting candidates already in the country for PR. So around 2020, the Express Entry rounds targeted the Canadian experience class, and the scores gradually went down. I just had to wait until the cutoff scores were lower than mine. So long story short, I got invited, I got to apply for PR, and now I'm currently preparing, or rather procrastinating, my application for Canadian citizenship. Now, with every mistake, and I must admit, I've made several big ones, there are key lessons that we can take away from my experiences. The first lesson is that being able to study in Canada is transactional. It's transactional in the sense that we pay hefty international student fees in exchange for an education and a privilege to experience Canada. Beyond that, everything else, like being able to work during our studies, work after graduation, and possibly stay in Canada long term, are just bonuses. Canada does not owe us anything beyond the education we paid for, and we shouldn't feel entitled to more. The second lesson, which I learned the hard way, is to have a contingency plan. To be honest, initially, I only saw Canada as a stepping stone, with plans to just get an education here and then return back home with the knowledge and experience I gained. But my real mistake was making that firm decision from the get-go without considering that I might actually fall in love with Canada. So when I changed my mind, adjusting was a logistical nightmare because I didn't plan for it. So the consequences were on me. Now I'm sharing this so you don't make the same mistake. The better move here is to keep your options open and fluid. That way you can maneuver more flexibly when the time comes to make a decision at the crossroads. Finally, and this is a tough one to swallow, but PR is not guaranteed. While Canada has the authority to grant PR, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get one. It's like poker. You have to pay to see whether you have won the hand or not. And sometimes it takes a lot of skill and a bit of luck. And other times, like my situation, it required a shit ton of luck, or rather COVID luck. Now, don't get me wrong, international students actually do have leverage, you know? You guys have foreign education and skills combined with your Canadian education and work experience. I mean, that gives you an advantage towards more PR pathways. But the recent changes in Canada, which are like the flop, turn, or river in poker, mean that even if we have a good hand, doesn't necessarily mean it's a win. So to answer your question, is it still possible to get PR in Canada? Well, the answer is yes, it's possible, but it all depends on what Canada is looking for when you become eligible to apply for PR later. And this is the tricky part because it's so hard to predict what the political or social situation would be like in 3 or 4 years. By this, I mean, would the current government still be in power, or a new government will be in power and have different immigration policies? What about social changes like cost of living, unemployment rate, and housing? All these factors dictate the immigration policies that impact your chances for PR. With that, you're probably wondering what strategies you should have in place to maximize your chances for PR, right? Well, in this final part of the video, we'll talk about just that. First, stay updated with the policy changes. So follow the main source, aka IRCC, as well as other reliable immigration sources for the most current information. Additionally, you can also watch my videos. Shameless plug. But the point is to keep up with the news and changes so you stay ahead of the curve. Next, choose the best school that you can get into. Don't just choose a school because it's easy to get into or just because it's affordable. Not all schools are built the same, and while some are good, they might not necessarily meet your needs. Thorough research matters here, and factors like PGWP eligibility, quality of education, employment outcomes, costs, and the like should be considered. Now, once you have a list of schools, check if they offer your chosen program and if you meet the admission requirements. If you do, apply to several schools to increase your odds of acceptance. I'd recommend applying to at least 5, as this will give you more flexibility in choosing one that fits your education and immigration needs. Next, when choosing a program, opt for a 2-year program instead of 1. This will provide you with a longer PGWP, giving you more time to develop an immigration strategy for PR. Moreover, with a longer PGWP, you gain more time to build skilled work experience in Canada. And more skilled work experience translates to a higher score for Express Entry, thereby increasing your chances of receiving an invitation to apply for PR. Next, be strategic about the program you choose. Consider studying industries that Canada is focusing on to meet labor market demand. You can do this by looking at the types of candidates invited through Express Entry and the provincial nominee programs. By analyzing these, you can identify the key industries that are being prioritized to address labor shortages. Now, just be aware that the demands could change by the time you get here or qualify for a PR pathway to Canada. This is why it's important to stay adaptable and prepared for unexpected changes. Last but not least, don't choose a program or career solely for the sake of gaining PR. Similarly, don't just follow trends blindly or rush into a program or career just because it's popular right now. For example, with the recent changes, you may have heard all this talk about choosing a master's program as a strategy for PR. But before you decide on a master's, think about if it's really the right choice for you. For instance, if you're just joining the bandwagon in applying for an MBA, then everyone else might think the same way. So in a matter of 2 or 3 years' time, there will be an influx of MBA grads. These graduates will be looking for the same jobs as you, which increases your competition in the job market, making it challenging to find work after graduation. If that happens, you'll be back to where you started, no better off than before. So for me, it's better to choose a program that matches your interests and leads to a career you like. That way you'll have a job you enjoy no matter what happens with your PR. Anyway, that's all for now. I hope I gave you a clear picture of how to tackle this question. Now, I have a question for you. What's your overall feeling about Canada's current immigration landscape, especially for international students? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Take care and be kind. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.
Like and subscribe to rrdancel and leave comments. Make sure to turn on your notifications on YouTube to see her next video.
Good job. You're natural.